Charlotte while Boris's 77-year-old mother could explain her son's cold stare. It reflected the family's great secret. Stanley, the star after 20 days in the jungle of the 2017 series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, could not understand how his son had become Prime Minister. Earlier in 2019, he said that Boris, despite a masterly understanding from Pericles about risk and power, was not personally ambitious and never took risks. Looking across at his son during the dinner, Stanley imagined that in life everything happened spontaneously, without much forethought. In his self-centered approach to life, Stanley misinterpreted much about the world, not least what his son had learned from his father's mistakes. As usual, Boris's enthusiasm and jokes during the Chequers dinner hid his own feelings. Secretive and untrusting, his accomplished performance concealed his vulnerability to stress. Compartmentalization has been a key to his public success. Few outsiders could imagine any anxiety provoking an occasional meltdown. An extra gear in his life, fueled by defiance, set him apart from his contemporaries. Ruthless ambition had allowed him to exploit the natural reserve of his competitors. Any sadness about his children's absence was cancelled out by his triumph. "It's all about Boris," many of those working with him would frequently assert. But even for his family, that truism merely highlighted the enigma. Did anyone, they wondered, know the real Boris? They agreed he was a loner, with few close friends. Among those few had been Marina, his anchor and consigliere, and the ghost at the feast. Marina's magic had held the Johnson clan together for years, especially more recently at the family parties in Chevening, the Foreign Secretary's official country home. Boris's disloyalty to Marina had generated intense hostility towards him and deep sympathy for her. Marina blamed Stanley for her marriage's collapse and refused to speak to him. Like Allegra, she said that Boris's adultery and his other misdemeanors mirrored his father's habits. The same unhappiness Stanley had spread among his own children, she said, was being repeated by Boris towards his 4 children with Marina. Like father, like son, echoed across the Chequers dining room. To understand the new Prime Minister required forensic examination of his relations with his father, both as a child and as an adult. Naturally, the fracture of their close relations was concealed from the public. United by intelligence, charm, and their blonde hair, the Johnsons were lauded by the media as a dynasty of achievers, although a profile written 2 years earlier by Prue White in the Times had, after focusing on Stanley's successful appearance on I'm a Celebrity, concluded, "All his wit, charm, and self-deprecation were a smokescreen for narcissistic, rapacious ambition." Stanley gave the impression that he was never hurt by the truth. That was an illusion. The seamless, friendly competition generated by Stanley among his eldest children, endlessly described by the media, had been both remarkable and destructive. The first fractures of their relationships had appeared many years earlier, but Brexit had become the public lightning rod for their disagreements. Rachel was openly opposed to Boris's Brexit campaign, and her husband had rarely missed an opportunity to express his dislike of his brother-in-law. By contrast, although Joe, the quietest and most intelligent of Stanley's 6 children, was a committed Europhile, he remained a loyal MP and minister in Boris's new government. His wife, Amelia Gentleman, a Guardian journalist, opposed Boris, but she had remained silent in public. Likewise, Leo was a Europhile, displeased by Boris's leadership of the Brexit campaign, but he also remained diplomatically silent. The major surprise was Stanley's stance. Unlike his children, the patriarch of a previously united family had abandoned his lifelong passion for a united Europe to share the limelight with his son. Anxious to stay close to the flame, he had switched from an ardent European to a Eurosceptic. Amid so many conflicting emotions, especially the mix of Brexit and Marina, no Johnson family gathering could escape a meltdown argument, and that evening was no different. Looking across the darkened fields at the end of the meal, Stanley was naturally proud that his eldest son was Prime Minister. His own political ambitions had largely failed, but he enjoyed basking in his son's triumph. He had eagerly accepted the opportunity to stay.